It's exactly 100 miles since my last video. You don't really care, but I drove this thing all the way to Bass Pro Shops because of a YouTube comment from David Sawyer, who reminded me 1 year from the day that I got my last fishing license that I like to fish. Well, my fishing license expired that same morning, so I dropped everything the moment I read that comment and left to go get it renewed. I didn't have to go that far to do that, but it was a great opportunity for testing and further data logging after my last trip to the track. The timing changes really seem to work out well for me, and we'll take a look at those in a minute, but some of my part throttle data and my boost control solenoid settings still needed work. This is my VE table, also known as the speed density tab. I'm pretty happy with where my global fuel and my VE table overall are right now, but I made a settings file that fattened up some of the part throttle cells a bit on this table. It's been a little herky-jerky idling through parking lots at low speed. I don't tune while I drive. I tune my car from my couch. The settings file is how I move that data from the comfort of my couch to the driver's seat. So now that I've turned the key on and I'm connected to my ECU, I've copied the VE table. I go back into the live ECU config settings and click the speed density tab. Then I just paste the table in. You'll see the border between the blues and the greens changes the most. The bold text values are the cells that changed, and they stay that way until you hit save to ECU. You have to save the settings in order for them to take effect. We'll have to cover the couch session and how I come to determine what to change in another video. It'll probably be a video of me calling Robert from the Boosted Beaver channel after I've emailed him a log. I did the same thing with the settings file for my wastegate solenoid duty cycles. Before the last video, I ran a linear value of 50% across the board just to turn the boost up to something other than wastegate pressure. And that's the wrong way to do it, but it worked. Now I've made changes to decrease the boost in first gear, to hold my wastegate shut under vacuum, and to increase the duty cycles in second and third gear where boost starts to fall off as RPM increases. Typical behavior of a TD05 turbo housing, but anyway, we'll see what it does from there. Unfortunately, I had to pull a ton of timing out of this thing. Let me show you. Here we are in the Direct Access tab looking at my timing curve as it sits right now in the ECU. I'm going to open a log from the last video's races just to show you how far this changed in order to control the knock. Okay, I'm just going to copy the current table here for part of this comparison. I pulled a lot of timing out of this thing. Here's the old log before the changes, and you'll see the colors and the numbers change. The data I gathered moved a whole lot of this table. I've pulled more than 5 degrees out of some cells, and it seemed to be gone. However, that was 30 degrees ago in cool night air. It's 88 degrees and sunny right now, and we've completely missed spring. We've gone right into summer and all the humidity's been replaced by pollen. I haven't had a chance to address the tires yet, but they're ordered. I've just got a chance to check my tuning adjustments, and I don't want that to go to waste. See if my wastegate solenoid settings are working like I wanted them to, and see if I can't back up what I ran before with the timing pulled out. Tree. I nailed all the shifts. That felt really good, like maybe I beat my best kind of good. It is absolutely terrifying slowing down in this thing from over 110 miles an hour with it out of alignment as bad as it is, and I got absolutely destroyed by that Corvette that had a 4-door Cadillac body on it. Did you even hear that thing? Even though I was aiming for a good reaction time, I still babied it off the line the same way I did in my previous best pass, and so far these tires seem to like that the best. Then I got my time slip. I don't like to look at that thing when I'm driving, so I like to wait until I stop. Better pay attention to where I'm going. Yeah, the suspense is killing me too. At first glance, everything looked really good. Sure enough, I nailed that tree. That was the fastest 60 foot I've ever run on these tires. When the 60 foot's quicker, the miles per hour typically drop, and you can see that versus my last time out. But the quicker 60 foot lent itself to my best elapsed time yet on this build at 1369 at 109.76 miles per hour. It's practically the same exact thing I ran before I pulled a whole lot of timing out of it, but as I looked at the logs, I found I somehow managed to get all of that knock right back. Sure, it's hot out here today, but something else is wrong because the engine is shifting lean every time I bang gears. I made some settings changes and I tweaked things throughout the evening, but this is a video about traction, not tuning. Tuning this thing's probably going to remain a work in progress. Please don't fill my comments full of demands for me to switch to E85. I already know. E85 would be the easy way out for me. I have nothing personal against E85, it's just that I didn't pick this challenge because it was easy. I picked this challenge because it's hard. You should already have been able to tell that based off of the chassis selection. There are bigger lessons for me to learn on pump gas. It could be that I'm forced to switch to E85 later down the road, and it'll be another great learning experience if I do that. But for right now, I'm learning plenty with gasoline. Banking on warmer track temperatures, I decided to launch a little bit harder and see if I could stick it. Of course, being in a different lane and one where someone just spilled stuff doesn't help me any, but we'll see. Nope, didn't make a bit of difference. It did the same exact thing that it's done on all my other drag passes whenever I try to launch it above 2500 RPMs. It roasts the tires and they turn to goo. I nailed that tree, but I added 1/3 of a second to the 60 foot, and you can see the resulting 0.6 of a second slower of a pass by the end of the track. We've talked about the 60 foot rule of thumb before here, and how dropping 1/10 of a second off the 60 foot marker takes 2/10 of a second off the 1320 foot marker. This is why tire selection matters. If you want to be competitive, you have to get a good, consistent 60 foot, and to do that, you have to have traction. Next up is Adam's boosted 335 BMW. He complained that his fuel pump failed and that he had to put the stock one back in. It kept him from running E85 tonight. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just going to try to do the same thing that works for me again. I'm just here for the data logs. The tree wasn't too bad. I like putting a 0 in that first spot, but I missed this time. I spun just a little bit and my 60 foot sucked. Once again, when you do the math on the 60 foot rule versus my best pass in 60 foot, it explains my 1422 ET here. However, if Adam can run 12s on gasoline with a 1.9 60 foot, there's no reason I can't. We're only 4 miles per hour apart. I've even run a 112 before. But the challenge that I have is doing it with the front wheels. Good job, Adam. I've raced an M3 that was slower than that. So anyway, my point to come out here and to show you these races is to demonstrate the 60 foot rule at play and show how your launch affects your elapsed time and how necessary consistent traction comes into play. That so-called last piece of the puzzle was dropped on my porch right before I left for the track today. So we just traveled back in time. Isn't that amazing? I was really happy to get these. It was late on a Friday and I had an appointment to have them mounted and balanced and an alignment performed the following Tuesday. This is going to make such an incredible difference in how this car performs. I can't wait. I went with Toyo Proxy's R888Rs, 225/50s for a 7-inch wheel. But what to do with all the anxiety while we wait for that appointment? Well, I guess I could do something to make the interior nicer. Months, if not a year ago, I snaked a bunch of parts off of an Elantra that looked just like mine in the junkyard. There's a full video about it on Patreon. It looked just like Traja, but it was actually a base model with a leaky sunroof, and I took parts off of it that were useful for my GLS to cure some of its ails. It's long overdue that I put them to use. One of the things I hate about the interior is my unsightly odometer gauge cluster. The plastic housing may be adequate out of the box, but it's cracked and broken now, and it mounts outside the dash in a place where it makes them hard to see. What good is an oil pressure gauge if you can't read it? So I fabricated a plate to mount my gauges beneath the stereo, carefully filing the holes to perfectly match the rectangular plastic screw holes that are on the factory dash bezel. I primed and painted it too. But in order for that little modification to work, I also needed to change how my stereo was mounted. So I made a steel collar for the sleeve with welded on tabs that fit the screw holes to the factory radio and tidied up the stereo install while that paint dried. That part was really boring, so I skipped most of it. It's sort of a shame because there would have been a lovely bloody scene where I jammed a triangular file through my thumbnail and into the meat in front of the bone. It nearly went all the way through. It was great. There it is. That's a nasty little bugger right there. But anyway, all I have to do is put this thing back together and it's easy. We did it once before in another video. I'm happy for having used bullet connectors on the harness that I made, and one of the reasons I did that is because I always knew that I wanted to move these gauges into the dash bezel, and I'd need to be able to unplug them if I had to work inside the dash and remove that bezel. So after I get all three of these things into the new bezel, the wires are already trained to fit in the right places. That makes it easy. The reason I didn't center each one of these gauges is because I wanted a blank space to the side for expansion. I'm sure I've got some warning lights and switches in its future. One of the parts the junkyard Elantra provided was this new dash bezel. It has some switches for features that my car doesn't have, like cruise control, but I'm happy that it's not all cut up and destroyed. There was one piece of plastic that broke off that I melted back onto it and did a pretty good job, and a screw hole that needs some work, but it doesn't have the stereo hole cut open for a double DIN head unit. That's why mine sucks. It's ugly. Of course, the other car was a smoker's car with a rusty, dirty ashtray and cigarette lighter, so I'm transferring all the good stuff from my old one to the new one before I begin. It's pretty easy to install these gauges now. 4 screws and it fits like a glove. Perfectly flush mounted, and the same roll bar paint color matched it perfectly. I'm transferring over the clip that holds the top right corner into the dashboard, but it's all in vain because the plastic hole for it in my dashboard is already broken. My last order of business before assembly is the upper screw hole that holds the other side in place. The plastic mount for the screw hole is broken, or it's cracked I should say. All the pieces are there, but someone ripped the thing out without taking the screw loose. I found it that way. I mixed up a batch of epoxy and I glued it the best I could. Then I reinforced it with the rest of the batch to give it all the strength I can. That should work. Daggone it, but now I have to wait for the epoxy to dry. Well, that worked out spectacularly. I hope someday I can figure out a way to make this clip work again. You can see the stereo screwed nicely into the dash, and all my connections are accessible and color-coded to make reconnecting all of them easy even in bad light. There's a ton of switches and lighting connectors and gauges, the clock, the cigarette lighter. This is a busy part. It's nice to have it all organized, but it's not the only part I got from that junked car. It had a worn but complete, uncracked manual transmission center console in it. It didn't have the back half that I'm removing because it was a base model, but it had the centerpiece that's a perfect fit for this thing. And it's even the right color too. Duct tape colored. That's the other reason I wanted to move these gauges. This thing wouldn't fit if I didn't. So there's a tattered ratty boot on this thing and it was disgusting. I'll have to do something else about that. But now to put that armrest back in. At least it's supposed to be an armrest anyway. It's pretty uncomfortable with the top broken off of it. This part was completely under-engineered. It's a victim of plastic fatigue. What do you want for a $9,000 car in 1992 though? This car was never supposed to live this long. I'm not interested in trying to source one of these armrests. I already know they won't exist. I'm just trying to cut up a piece of blister pack and duct tape to fashion my own hinge back onto this thing. It's no different of a design than Hyundai used. I'm sure blister pack will eventually fatigue and break just the same, eventually. Not this month. Not this year, I hope. I trimmed holes on the inside of the blister pack to help the tape stick better. Wrapped the old plastic part of the mount and poked holes through the blister pack for the screws. Then went back in the car and screwed it down. There. Perfect fit. I needed the armrest back. I like the fact that it's self-closing. It's solid. I don't need to go all the way back to the junkyard for this. I pulled that fix out of my trash can. Will you look at this? This is so much better than where this car came from. The entire console looks better than it's ever looked. I still have a place to put my phone and it's a perfect factory fit. And, wait for it, it's got cup holders. This car's never had cup holders, and I'm sure that these things suck at holding drinks just as bad as the coin tray holds my phone, or my coins. But now I have them. I'd work a little bit on the dome light, except that I've run out of time. It's Monday night. I figured I'd drop this thing off at the shop in late night traffic where I won't be a hazard to others during rush hour and, clearly it's not me that people need to be looking out for. I just wanted to be able to avoid situations like that during rush hour is all. Stupidity may occur at any moment. Oh well, forget them. I'm on a mission to ensure that this is the last time I ever have to race on those old crusty tires, and I know that these people get to work a whole lot earlier than I do, so I wanted it to be available to them when they came in. It's the next day. I brought donuts. You know how I do. Right about now, Detective Coding's saying, "Hey, where are my donuts?" I got you, homies. You'll see me soon. I'm at the Richmond Performance Modifications Car Care Center on Broad Street. I came here because I wanted to use their Hawkeye alignment system. That's Tim. Tim's about to discover that there's no adjustment room on the camber plates and that our corrections will have to be done on the struts. If there's ever been a car deserving of coilovers so that you could use those camber plates, it's this one. Sorry, Tim. I apologize for any part of you having to sit inside of that car.
Now what we're doing now is a cast the camber sweep. Once you roll it back and forth, it'll tell you which way to turn the wheels and everything. And it reads the dynamics of the car and everything.
Okay.
So see now it's telling you to turn it to the left. So you just ready to turn the wheel to the left, and then when it gets in the green, you gotta hold it, and then turn it back the other way when it tells it to. And then we're also gonna print it out for you before and after. We always print them out.
Well, that's awesome. That's exactly the date I want to see. I want to see how bad I screwed it up before I brought it to you.
We'll find out.
It's got a lot working against it. But because of how fast and responsive the Hawkeye system works at giving them feedback, the alignment job they managed to produce on this machine and on this particular car is spectacular from the driver's seat. They got it right the first time, and they gave me before and after data to take home with me. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Kyle. You guys did a great job, worth every penny. Excellent. It's good information to have. It gives me a good baseline and a starting point. And then if I have to change anything, then you don't mind seeing me back here again, do you?
Nope.
Yeah, excellent.
I know where I'm coming.
Want to see? Okay, it's Friday, but I'm at Dinwiddie instead of Richmond Dragway this time. The air quality sucks tonight. It's 90 degrees and 100% humidity, and it didn't cool off until I got my last run in this evening. I wanted to make a baseline run first, so that I could cross-check what I run here versus running at Richmond Dragway. I wanted to do that because the tires aren't the only thing that's different tonight. So I decided to do the same old baby it off the line below 2500 RPM launch that worked well on the old tires. No bueno. Right off the launch, you see me visibly upset about red lighting. I don't know what to do with all this newfound traction. The rest of the run looked just like a good run back home, except my mile per hour is way down tonight. Some of that is the tune, some of that's in the driver, and some of it's the weather. I need to adjust my own reaction to the light because of these tires. This isn't a bad problem to have though. I'm happy if suddenly this car's getting its weight moving quicker. The time was respectable though, right up there below my other 3 best passes from this month. But I needed to turn the boost down a little bit in an attempt to make my intake temperatures lower. I also pulled more timing out of the cells that I found it knocking in, trying to get ahead of it a little bit, and then I lined back up against a 4-cylinder EcoBoost Mustang. The owner and I think it was her dad were having a great time together at the track doing the exact same thing that I was doing, figuring out the car on tires that it came with. This time I decided to try launching my Hyundai at 4,000 RPMs off the pedal. The old tires would have melted if I tried that, and would have hopped all the way down the road shaking my moobs off to get me rolling. Let's see what these tires are going to do. They bog. Launching off the pedal doesn't build any boost, and until you've got the throttle wide open or until you load up the clutch, it won't even start trying to build boost. This is nuts. I used to launch my GSX at 4,250 RPMs at around 8 to 10 PSI. It's starting to look like I might have enough traction with these tires to maybe even start making use of launch control. Even though I bogged, I've now got two great baseline runs for the 60-foot comparison. I know I didn't mention the whole best 60-foot ever thing on the previous run. It was because I wasted it on 105 mile/hour trap speed. On the previous run I tried to launch at 1,000 RPMs higher than where I've ever been able to launch without spinning it, and wouldn't you know it, it bogs. That's actually fantastic. It means I have traction. The steering wheel is straight, the car feels balanced, the torque steer is gone, the launch bounce is under control, and it goes in a straight line, even in a crosswind. Richmond Performance Modifications did a really amazing job straightening this thing out for me. I guess it's up to me now to figure out how to launch it. The times I've run so far tonight are comparable to the ones that I used to run on the hockey pucks, even though I was going 5 to 7 mile/hour faster at a different track. I blame the heat for my mile per hour tonight. But now that we know what it's running, let me see if I can get you a better launch to demonstrate the 60-foot rule of thumb with. Up next I'm racing Paul, I think. His truck is loud, you can hear it. When I asked him his name, Paul is what I think I heard. If I got it wrong, sorry bro, you're Paul in this video. Blame your truck for that, it's a beautiful truck by the way. Because I bogged at 3,500 RPMs, surely I can at least squeak one of my new tires at 4,500 RPMs off the pedal, right? I really would like to find the point where these tires start to spin. I was really looking forward to having both of my butt cheeks handed to me by both brothers, 2 videos in a row. I can check that one off my list. You got a whole family of whoop ass, Paul, but make sure you show your brother that time slip and tell him that Jafro got a new set of tires. It's crazy. I can't believe this is a front wheel drive car. I bogged it again, but at least I came out with a 2.0 60 foot. Look at that. Let's play with these numbers a little bit because these last 2 runs are perfect for this example. The 60-foot rule isn't law because there are so many variables that come into play, but it gives you a rough idea of how improving your launch will affect your time slip. Let's bring out the previous time slip, shall we? My new 60-foot time is 0.346 seconds faster. Double that and you've got 0.692 of 1 second. If you subtract that from my previous ET, you come up with a 13.154. If you look at my most recent time slip, you'll see that's only off by about 16 hundredths of a second from what I actually ran. This is the kind of difference that tires can make on your time slip. I've still got more work to do in order to get the launch I want. It's clear to me that I can use launch control on this setup now, so things are going to get really interesting. For another example of the 60-foot rule, let's play with some of Paul's numbers. Look at Paul's 60-foot. Look at both of our miles per hour. Let's see what could have happened if the planets aligned in such a way for some kind of a gravity hole to open up just below my car in my lane, stick me to the track, and somehow give me his 60-foot time. 0.355, 0.710, 1331 minus 0.70. It looks like it would yield a 12.6 second pass. Keep in mind, I bogged this run. I have no idea yet what these tires are really going to be capable of. All I can tell you is that through the last 4 videos of this series, this car has been completely transformed. You can let this horrible car be an example that no amount of modifications can ever fix cheap tires. I went and got you the numbers to show you how Nick from Bad Obsession Motorsport is right. Michael hates it whenever I admit Nick is right about something. What this proves is that 12s in this car is not just possible, it's inevitable. I have plenty of tricks left to make it faster, but from now on, at least you get to see me make it stick. I've always said that this car had a 12 in it if I could just make it stick, and this is how I did it. I hope you've all enjoyed this series as much as I have making it, because I've had a blast. I love being at the track again. I'm extremely grateful to all the people supporting me on Patreon. They're philanthropists. I've been watching my own subscription feed dry up, and they're the reason I'm still in yours. They're keeping my channel's lights on and the cameras rolling, and that's no joke. Oh, I almost forgot. A special kind of thanks also goes out to my good friend Scott for filming me at Dinwiddie tonight. Scott, I'd have even paid you if you did a better job. Instead, you just get that special kind of thanks. There are other things down in the stuff with the boxes and the bells and the text and the thumbs and the links that you can play with, and I love it whenever people do those kinds of things with all my stuff here on YouTube. Rain's moving in and I've got one headlight on semi-slicks and 40 miles from home, so I have to run away and fight another day. I can't wait to see what happens next, but you know me, I'll probably film it. So until then, stay tubed.